let's explore how the first trimester unfolds, week by week, and discover the incredible science behind how life begins. Week 1 to 2, the countdown. Begins pregnancy is measured in a somewhat unusual way. Doctors count pregnancy starting from the first day of the mother's last menstrual period, not from the day fertilization actually happens. So technically, during the first 2 weeks of pregnancy, you're not pregnant yet. Instead, the body is preparing for ovulation, the moment when one of the ovaries releases an egg. Each month, hormones signal the ovaries to mature an egg while the uterus builds a thick lining rich in blood vessels. Think of this lining as preparing a comfortable environment, just in case a fertilized egg arrives. Around the middle of the menstrual cycle, ovulation occurs. The egg is released into the fallopian tube, where it waits. If a sperm cell reaches it, fertilization can happen. And when it does, something incredible begins. Week 3, conception. The first cell. Fertilization usually occurs inside the fallopian tube. When a sperm successfully penetrates the egg, their genetic material combines to create a brand new cell called a zygote. Inside that tiny cell is the complete set of 46 chromosomes that determine everything from eye color to blood type. In other words, the genetic blueprint for an entirely new human being is already there. Almost immediately, the zygote begins dividing. One cell becomes two, two become four, four become eight. Within just a few days, this cluster of rapidly multiplying cells forms a structure called a blastocyst. But it's not just floating around aimlessly, it's traveling. Slowly but steadily, the blastocyst moves down the fallopian tube toward the uterus. Yos week 4, implantation, pregnancy. Truly begins. About 5 to 7 days after fertilization, the blastocyst finally reaches the uterus. Here, it attaches itself to the thick uterine lining in a process called implantation. You can imagine it like a tiny seed planting itself into fertile soil. Once implantation happens, the body starts producing an important hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG. This hormone tells the ovaries to stop releasing eggs and signals the body to support pregnancy. It's also the hormone detected by pregnancy tests. So, if you've ever wondered how those tests work, they're actually detecting this chemical signal that a developing embryo has implanted in the uterus. And from this moment on, pregnancy is officially underway. Week 5. The first heartbeat. Just a few weeks after conception, something remarkable happens. Cells that will become the baby's heart begin to organize and start pulsing rhythmically. Around week 5, this early heart structure starts beating. At this stage, it's not yet the fully formed four-chambered heart we're familiar with. Instead, it's more like a tiny tube that rhythmically contracts. But even so, it's the first sign of the circulatory system coming to life. At the same time, another vital structure begins forming: the neural plate. This flat layer of cells will soon fold inward to create the neural tube, which later develops into the brain and spinal cord. This process happens incredibly early in pregnancy, often before someone even realizes they are pregnant. That's why doctors recommend that anyone who may become pregnant take folic acid, a vitamin that helps the neural tube develop properly. Studies show that adequate folic acid intake can reduce certain brain and spinal cord birth defects by more than 70%. Week 6 to 7. The body plan. Emerges by week 6 and 7, the embryo is undergoing rapid transformation. Tiny buds begin appearing along the sides of the body. These buds will eventually grow into arms and legs. At the same time, the early versions of many organs begin forming. These include the brain, the lungs, the liver, the digestive system. Even the eyes and ears begin developing as small indentations and folds in the head. Interestingly, the embryo also has a small structure that resembles a tail. This temporary feature is part of early human development and will later shrink to form the tailbone, also known as the coccyx. Despite all this activity, the embryo is still extremely tiny, only about the size of a blueberry. Yet the foundations of nearly every major organ system are already forming. Week 8. A recognizable shape. By the 8th week of pregnancy, the embryo begins to look noticeably more human. The head is large compared to the rest of the body because the brain is developing rapidly. Tiny fingers and toes start forming at the ends of the limb buds. The eyes are becoming more defined, though the eyelids are still forming. Inside the body, the heart is now beating more regularly and pumping blood through developing vessels. At this point, the embryo measures about 1.5 centimeters long, roughly the size of a raspberry. But perhaps the most important milestone is happening internally. Almost all of the major organs have begun to take shape. Yet this stage is known as organogenesis, when the basic structures of the body's organs are first formed. Because so many vital systems are developing during this time, the embryo is especially sensitive to harmful substances such as alcohol, certain medications, and toxins. Week 9. From embryo to fetus. Around week 9, an important transition occurs. The developing baby is no longer called an embryo. From this point forward, it is referred to as a fetus. This change reflects a shift from building the basic body structures to growing and refining them. The fetus now has small arms and legs, defined fingers and toes, a developing face. Tiny movements may begin as muscles and nerves start working together, although these movements are usually too small for the mother to feel yet. Inside the body, the digestive system and kidneys are also beginning to function in early forms. Week 10 to 11. Rapid growth. During weeks 10 and 11, growth accelerates. Bones begin replacing cartilage in a process called ossification, which will eventually create the skeletal system. The fetus can now bend its arms and legs. The heart is beating strongly, circulating blood through the growing body. Even fingernails are starting to appear. At this stage, the fetus is still incredibly small, about the size of a fig. But the level of development happening inside the body is extraordinary. The brain alone is producing thousands of new nerve cells every minute. Week 12. The end of the first trimester. By the end of week 12, the first trimester comes to a close. And the transformation is astonishing. The fetus now measures about 4 inches long and weighs around 1 ounce. Nearly all major organs are present. The arms, legs, hands, and feet are clearly formed. Facial features are becoming more defined. The skin is still very thin, so thin that blood vessels can be seen underneath. Although the reproductive organs are developing, it's usually still too early to determine the baby's sex on an ultrasound. One more important milestone occurs at this stage. Because the most delicate stages of development have already passed, the risk of miscarriage drops significantly after the first trimester. Why the first trimester matters so much. The first trimester is often described as the foundation of human development. And during these first 12 weeks, the brain begins forming, the heart starts beating, the nervous system takes shape, the organs begin developing. All of this happens before the baby is even large enough to fit in the palm of your hand. It's an extraordinary example of how quickly life can develop when guided by the instructions written inside our DNA. The journey is just beginning. But even after these incredible first 3 months, the journey is far from over. During the second trimester, the baby will grow rapidly, develop senses like hearing and touch, and begin moving enough for the mother to feel. By the third trimester, the baby will gain weight, strengthen its lungs, and prepare for life outside the womb. From a single fertilized cell to a fully developed newborn, the process of pregnancy is one of the most fascinating transformations in biology. And it all begins in the first trimester.